Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. The undercard for the Anthony Joshua KUBRAT PULEV fight, well, it's starting to take shape with two fights for the October 28th build announced by Matchroom promoter Eddie Hearn. So we have Dave Allen against Lenroy Thomas. This is a heavyweight rematch. And at light heavyweight, we've got Frank Buglioni and Callum Johnson. So Allen, he will be looking to avenge his split decision loss to Thomas in May. So in that fight, Thomas, well, he looked pretty decent. Allen, a bit limited. If I recall correctly, there was some surprise, well, I was at least, that the scoring was so close, because I thought Thomas, well, he did the much better work, the slicker work. So Thomas, he says Allen, he's a gentleman who deserves a rematch, and his goal is to crack the top 15 rankings after this fight, and ultimately he wants to fight a heavyweight title. The White Rhino, meanwhile, he says he wants to right a wrong, and the loss to Thomas haunts him. He even said that, haunts him. He even admits that he underestimated Thomas, and that Thomas did the quality eye-catching work. Well, that was certainly what I saw. So the next quote, this cracked me up from David Allen. The White Rhino is a box office superstar 4 times in 10 months. I'm living the dream, but this is my last chance. If I don't win, where do I go from here? I don't want to face that. And he is right. You could probably actually make a case that his 12-3-1 record does not support him being on this card. But I guess that shows you the value of good promotional work, both by Matchroom and Dave Allen himself. He's been a big part of this. I'll come back to this in a moment. So what we really have here in Dave Allen, based on his body of work, is a durable journeyman, a 12-3-1 record that doesn't scream up-and-comer, it doesn't scream someone who's on the rise. All that he's proven so far, especially when he's tried to step up, is he's not quite there yet. He's come off second best. But there's no doubt he's a very likable and funny guy. He comes across well in the media, and that's a big part of why I think Eddie Hearn keeps putting him on cards. People want to see him. And not just for the fighting, because if it were based on that alone, he'd be grafting away in pub halls right now. Actually, if he loses, he's probably not too far away from it, actually. That's the thing about good promotional work. It can get people interested in fighters you normally wouldn't follow or really take much of an interest in. On Allen's body of work alone, his fan base and his opportunities that he's been given to date was certainly disproportionate. So Eddie Hearn has certainly been very loyal to Allen. And the results, well, they don't really justify it. And from what I've seen, though, in general, Eddie Hearn, he's very good at getting talent. He builds their careers over time, and if the results follow, they end up becoming his stars. And when they are stars, they make him money. And I think it was Hatman Strikes Back who said this the other week, that, say, Hearn signs 20 fighters, knowing that only 3 or 4 of them will end up being stars with draw power. He doesn't know which ones will be those stars, but he's letting that 3 or 4 year period determine that. He develops them, and then that process separates the wheat from the chaff. But in this case with Allen, clearly it's not all about the results. He does bring something a lot of fighters don't have. He's got sort of an X factor, a magnetic personality. People want to see him do well. So that X-Factor personality, it does seem to have bought him some extra leeway here with Hearn, that perhaps other fighters with a 12-3-1 record would not be afforded. I don't think there's any doubt in that. And if he does have a loss on his 4th opportunity on a Matchroom card, was this his 5th one? He is right. It could be the last time we see Dave Allen on such a stage if he doesn't win. The results, despite his career, sooner or later, that ends up catching up with you. And people will start calling him a bum if he keeps losing. Some people already do. I would sort of class him as a decent British level fighter. And certainly the journeyman tag isn't unjustified at this point. It must be said though, his durability, and this is sort of throw this into the mix, that's worked in his favour. He might have lost, 3 times at the moment, so that was to White, Ortiz, and Thomas. But the punishment that he took, he wasn't embarrassed. He didn't suffer a brutal KO loss. Certainly, I think that would have walked hand in hand with your image if you got knocked out brutally. So his durability has been a big plus in his favour. I do think, though, that Allen, he has the potential to be better than he is. But what a ceiling is, well, I'm not so sure about that. Maybe European level? Commonwealth level? But to sort of take that step from where he is now, which is sort of in that British level, or there or thereabouts, his training and preparation, it's got to be on point. And it certainly has been a weakness previously. His desire to compete at the top level, it's waxed and waned a bit. But from what I'm seeing right now on social media, and this is in recent weeks, Allen has taken his training to a whole new level. He is uber serious about it. And judging from the posts on social media, he is as shredded as I've ever seen him. It certainly is a far cry from when he came in well overweight against Luis Ortiz. And mentally, Allen does seem to be dialed in a whole lot more. I mean, as we know, half this thing in boxing is mental. You have to have a strong mind. So on the other side of this coin, we've got Lenroy Thomas. So it's another chance for him to have worldwide exposure and recognition. Before that first fight with Allen, I think that was it May, and that was on the KUBRAT card, he was barely known. But he certainly has a degree of name recognition now because of that fight. And that will be boosted again, especially being on a Joshua card. Few fighters get such an opportunity to play to millions. I mean, it could be in the hundreds of millions of people. So a good showing could really be a shot in the arm to his career. And let's face it, the only way he's going to make any waves or traction in the division now is to beat Allen soundly, and then he's got to take on a decent level prospect or contender next. The trajectory to a title, and this is what he says he wants, he's got to go straight up now. So it has to be Allen and then someone serious. Someone who we'd go, yeah, that's a decent guy. But, given the way that Allen has been training, I'd hate to sort of say that this is in the bank for Thomas. But then again, he's had another 6 months as well to train. But it's unlikely to be a walk in the park. So I guess watch this space. The other fight, Frank Buglioni against Callum Johnson. Not a bad fight at all. A good addition to the card. I think like Allen, the thing with Buglioni in particular, he has benefited from being well promoted by Hearn. He's got decent name recognition among fans, especially compared to a whole lot of guys that are about his same level. His name's out there a lot more. He's been on higher profile cards, so a lot more fans will know him. So I'm not going to dig into this one. I'll stick to my heavyweight scene, but I would favour Buglioni for this. So the rest of the card, I'll be really interested to see how it takes shape. Obviously, we've already had the announcement, Kao Yafai and Sho Ishida, they will be on the undercard. But it's the rest now that I'm interested about. I think we'll see Katie Taylor. She will be wheeled out again. But for me, it would be really good to see her step it up a bit. They've been talking about her for a while. So, she's been a pro, almost a year now. She's been fighting quite often. But I think we need to dispense with the walking heavy bag opponents and put her in with a live body. Someone that's going to trouble and test her. We know that the women's division, especially the one that she's in, is not super deep. So she could certainly, I think, be moved along a little bit quicker. Ultimately, though, Eddie Hearn, he's got a plan for her. We haven't sort of heard it all laid out in detail. But clearly he's wanting to bring her along, make as much money off her as possible, but put her in the best possible position. But for me, I'd like to see her tested a bit more. Dillian Whyte, he is odds on to be near the top of the bill if, in fact, he ends up being on the card. I just hope, though, if he does, it's against a meaningful opponent. There is some talk that he might end up facing someone like Lucas Brown. I wouldn't be mad at their fight, but for me it does more for, or I think at least, it does more for Brown than it does for White. Now just imagine if White and Jarrell Miller, if that were matched and made. Damn, that would be an intense build-up. If White were pursuing Joshua or Parker, then I think taking on Christian Hammer, well, that would make a lot of sense. Hammer is currently above him, or a couple of rungs above him, in the rankings for both of those sanctioning bodies. So while it would be a dangerous fight, it's not one I think that fans would be sort of too jazzed about. But it does make a lot of sense. So the fan interest may not be as high, and some people might be like, well, why are you fighting Christian Hammer? I think it would do a lot to get him closer to a Joshua rematch. We know he wants that. But also, it puts him in a good position with the WBO to have a go at Parker. If he was given that opportunity, he would fight for that title. So it'll be really interesting to see where things go with Dillian Whyte's career. I would expect to see him on this card. It just makes sense to sort of showcase him again. I mean, he's been on the shelf pretty much the whole year, bar that Malcolm Tan fight. So if you, let's take a look at this really quickly. If you've got Joshua, Yafai, Buglioni, and potentially White and Taylor on the bill, now that is shaping up as a pretty decent card. Certainly better than some other cards that I've seen around. But I think it goes back to that whole thing of good promotion. These guys have been promoted well. They've been rising to the top over time. And it looks pretty good. I mean, you throw in there Dave Allen as well. He's obviously going to be on that card. But I would like to know, who do you think should be on it? What other Matchroom fighters from the Matchroom stable are going to be added, do you think? And who would you like to see them facing? Be really interested to know. Hit like, subscribe, drop a comment, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.